one thing that I want to talk about is when you get into sitting down with the client, sometimes it's showing them the right thing is one of the important parts of the business, is show them opportunities or options that they can actually afford and will meet their needs in their budget. Okay, they can, there's all kinds of different things you can show someone. And that's probably the typical thing that kind of messes an agent up when they first get started is, I don't know what to do when I get in. I don't know what to show them. And I definitely understand that's why you call us so we can help you. All right. But as you start getting experience under your belt, you're going to start learning different proposal strategies that are important to show a client, particularly when it comes to an older client, a senior client that turns in a mortgage protection lead, and their mortgage might be $450,000 or $275,000 or $100,000, whatever the case may be. And most new agents, they're really confused on what to do with someone like that because they start running Forrester Strong Foundation or CFG Simplified Issue Term, and they run into like, well, this person can't qualify because they're too old, right? Or, it's way expensive when you show them a $250,000, mortgage protection program for a 75-year-old, and they're freaking out, okay? Or they don't know enough to just do something else, another strategy. Karyn Mousel is one of our top agents for years in our base shop. And I think she's the, not the master, the mistress, the madam of taking care of clients. And she's really, really focused on how to help them. And she's on her way. She's in the car. So hopefully she can still drive and hopefully it's not snowing. But I wanted her to share some situational things that you can kind of learn from on how to take care of clients in different proposal scenarios. Okay, so I'm going to unmute you, Karyn. Hopefully. There it is. Karyn.
Alex.
Whoa, good. I don't know what happened there.
All right, I don't either, but I could hear you the whole time. So
okay, all right. Well, let's do the deal. So kind of give us your approach when you walk into a home. The only information you typically know is the lead, what they sent in, and then hopefully their age, and then how do you go about kind of walk people through kind of each scenario, like the basic typical scenarios that you're running into and the types of leads.
Okay. So, as you said, Alex, all we know is, their name, address, and probably their age from the lead. So, I'm asking them if all of that information is correct. And as I'm going through the ATM, learning a little bit more about them, but the bottom line when it comes to figuring out quotes, I think matches up very well with the Alliance coin of what do I want, how do I get it? Think of that from the client perspective. What do they want? How can I help them get it? So if it's a mortgage protection lead, in the example you gave of the older client with the large mortgage, okay, when I'm doing the mortgage protection page, I am emphasizing the things that can be quoted for them when I'm going through that page. And for example, the older client, now Mary, when Joe passes away, if you had 2 or 3 years of mortgage payments covered before you have to make a decision about what you're going to do with the house, do you stay, do you move, what do you do? Would that be helpful to you? Joe, if you were to lose Mary, is that same 2 or 3 year period going to be helpful to you? And most of the time they're going to tell you, yes, that would be helpful. So then I'm focusing my quotes on various time periods for them, for that mortgage protection. as you asked me to do this, and I'm thinking back to various appointments I've run, you know, I remember one of my earliest final expense appointments that kind of threw me off, because at that time we just had very basic lead types, but was a final expense card that a client had sent in. When I got to the home and started talking to him, he told me he has an insurance plan that covers his final expenses. I was like kind of thinking to myself, why am I here? And his response to me is something that's always stuck with me and helps me return to that, what do they want? And he said his parents left money for him and his siblings, and he wanted to do the same for his kids. So when our clients receive our lead, they are not as informed as we are about all the different types of coverages that are available. They know that insurance will help their family. And it's our job to help inform them as to which types of insurance they can qualify for that will best help them. And, you know, I've got a family that I would love to help here in Minnesota. So, not old gentleman, but he's maybe in his 60s, and he is a double amputee due to diabetes, and he does not like the options we have available. He wants term coverage. And I'm like, I understand that's what you want. That's not going to be available for you. She still needs you to have some coverage.
How often?
And I just...
That happens often, doesn't it? When the expectation for the senior client on a mortgage protection is that they got this when they were 30 years old, when they bought their first home, that was only like $5 a month, right? Their expectation is totally different than what their health will allow them, right? So you got to break the news to them, right?
Right, but it's not, it's finding the right words to use to say
right
what you can do and what they can get and how it can help. You know, the good news is we still have options.
Right.
Even if it isn't exactly the option they thought they could get.
I like when Brant Swindell on his video on how he does the appointment, he gets them to admit that something's better than nothing, gets them to say something's better than nothing, and establishes them with that thought process that, you know, because we can't do this, we can do this. Isn't this better than not getting anything at all type of a, you know, process? Is that kind of where you go with it too?
Absolutely. Yep. They sent it in because they want to help their family. So I'm trying to use those words of, this is how you can help. That would be helpful, right?
Exactly. It's asking them the question, would this help Mary? Joe, when Mary has 6 months or 12 months to be able to, of mortgage payments, to figure out what she can do with the home, would that help her or would that hurt her? I like to do the either or. Will that help her or will that hurt her? You know, to get them to admit that it would still help, right?
Right. And in that, like, specific scenario, I'm not asking Joe if it will help Mary.
Right.
I'm asking Mary, will it help you?
Yes. Mary, the one who's got the problem, right?
Mary, the one who's surviving when Joe's gone.
Yeah.
So Joe wants to cover the whole mortgage. I know that. But this is going to help Mary. And Mary is saying, yes, it will help.
I think that...
And that's helping Joe realize it could still help.
Right. And the other thing, too, is it's so much easier to do it when the bond and rapport has been established, that you really care about helping them and that you are really there to do the best job you can with the situation that they're in. right? And I think that
Absolutely.
it's got to come from a genuine place in order to further that idea with them when you have to break the bad news. If they don't trust you, well then, it's kind of harder to do it when you're trying to do it in a very kind way, but a very, tell them the tough news, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's also helpful to use the phrases that, we've heard time and time again. This is what most of my clients in your situation do.
Oh, yeah.
This is what most of the people your age choose. This is what most of the people with your health conditions do. Letting them know they aren't alone making these choices.
Yeah, the other people are doing this too mode.
Mm-hmm. And also, if I'm sitting with a couple that have very different ages, very different health, I'm letting them know before I start putting down any numbers on paper for them, that because of those differences, we're going to look at different options for them. Because the best options for them can be different.
Right. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. In fact, it may necessitate even a different company, right?
Right. Oh, for sure. Oftentimes different companies, but maybe it is. We can cover the whole mortgage if she passes away, and we're putting 2 years of payments in place if he passes away.
Right. Right. So a question from Lori, she goes, so what if Mary, the survivor, is expecting more of a mortgage payoff?
That's why I need both of them in the meeting at the time I'm explaining what we can do.
Yep. They both got to be there, right?
Yep, absolutely.
No one-legged appointments.
No,
it's harder.
And
yeah, go ahead.
And that's where just the listening to the clients and learning about them. And, like you said, how Brant directs them. Brant is awesome at this of something's better than nothing. Something's going to help. And if you just say, I can't get everything I want, therefore I'll get nothing, you're not helping them.
Exactly.
That same scenario comes into place with younger clients who may have health issues or driving or criminal issues that maybe we're only starting with accidental. But I will let them know we keep getting new options and new products that become available. And for most of them, I'll say when you turn 40, we have more options opening up. Or if I have a very, very heavy young client, we can get this accidental death and disability in place right now. And when you turn 40, we have more options to add full coverage for you.
That's a great idea. Like sometimes with age restrictions, like if they're younger and they can't qualify for the whole life products because of age, we can bridge the gap with an accidental policy to get them to that age and then be able to cover them with a full benefit program. Now, isn't it important to get both the husband and the wife to understand that something is better than nothing? They both really got to be on board with the idea that you're telling them the truth, number one. Number two, we're going to have to consider, options that they weren't expecting, but, right?
Yes. And if they're like, well, that's not what the letter said, I will point out to them on a mortgage protection letter that at the time we send that letter out to them, all we know is their address and when they closed on their loan. We don't know anything about their age or their height or their weight or their driving record or their health conditions, but we have options and we can help.
Right. I think a lot of it is being able to diffuse that expectation, that unmet expectation. And because a lot of them, they'll think, not a lot of them, but there'll be people thinking that, oh, they just sign here and then they put it in place. It's more that kind of that credit life insurance mentality, but this ain't that. Right.
Right. Well, and I've done this almost 10 years, and I've only really had 2 clients in that time that I can recall that really were just like, this is false advertising. I thought I was already signed up when I sent this back.
Yeah.
2 in 10 years. You know what? Okay, whatever.
I know you're going to get those. Yeah, you're going to get those for sure. So Misty Cabin brought up a good point. Seniors are typically misinformed about the Social Security options. They believe that they're going to get either all of their spouse's full Social Security, and she just sent out a little document that says that is not true, right? Do you explain that to them about the household income?
Absolutely.
Social Security. So kind of talk through what you informed them about as far as the drop in income.
Absolutely. So as we're going through the ATM and I'm filling out the green sheet with what their current income is, I'm asking the question, are they collecting Social Security? How much is hers? How much is his? And asking, did either of them draw early? Because that's going to affect what they're going to have later on. So I'm doing the math right now. Your household is running on $4,000 a month. So when he passes away, if you are only getting 80% of his and lose yours, is it even realistic to expect you're going to be able to stay in this house long term paying off this loan?
Right.
It's opening their eyes to what that picture and what that impact is going to be. And it's easing the transition.
Right. And when you come across very boldly that that this is the case, there's not much that they can dispute you because of the stuff that when you tell them with confidence, they're not going to dispute it when you know that what you're saying is true. Even, especially when you show them stuff like from AARP, like this thing on how Social Security works when you're a spouse.
Right. Yeah. Or pulling something up just on Google of, here's a little paragraph right here. This explains that if you drew early, you only get 80% survivor benefit, But you mentioned something of, their expectation of what they can get. And for us, as we walk in the home and we're talking to them, for 10, 15 minutes, we start to know what they can or cannot get as we go through the ATM. And it's our job to not make the expectation bigger and make it, oh, I'm so sorry you can't get this. We can do this. It's just like what we can do is still really good, and it's going to be very helpful.
That's a great point. Not making it sound such a diminished benefit, right?
Right. If they can't cover the whole mortgage, it's just like, that's off the table.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Gone. Not, oh, gee, well, if you didn't have it, no, don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an optimistic thing saying, hey, but this is what we can do. And wouldn't this still help you, going at it? And this is like, because our demographics have started to skew older because baby boomers are, retiring at the rate of 10 to 13,000 a day now. Our mortgage protection needs are starting to skew older as well. So this is definitely the proposal process that is probably the most important in the home because you're going to encounter a lot of this. The other thing is like the the other scenarios are fairly straightforward. Final expense is real straightforward, you know, just mortgage protection with a younger person, very straightforward. But where you're going to run into, like for example, the percentages of types of policies, we only do about 22% of our policies are mortgage protection policies. Okay, back in the day, there were 80%, but they're 22%. Over half of our policies we write are whole life, whether it's guaranteed issue whole life or just regular whole life, it's actually over 50%. And the other, you know, the other 20-something percent are all the other cats and dogs that, you know, index universal life or whatever. So literally 50% are going to be whole life policies. And this is the reason, you know, at least in our mortgage protection league, this is the reason. I mean, that's what you're seeing out there, Karyn?
Absolutely. You know, and that's one of the things I like, that our product line is opening up to more options within the whole life side of things. You know, whether it is guaranteed issue or almost guaranteed issue but day one coverage, or whether it's a participating whole life that you can put, you know, some term riders onto and get it a little older in age, or, you know, that the whole life scenario is dropping lower in age, like with CFG all the way down to 18. And, you know, we just have to keep learning our products all the time as they change.
Yeah, so true. So in the few minutes that we have until you get to your next appointment, 4 minutes, any major changes that you've noticed in the field with working with the new CFG and the Forrester's product changes? Anything significant that you've seen?
The only thing I have, well, a couple things. One that we've heard a lot, that the Forrester's interview is much easier, but I think it requires more upfront explanation to the client.
Okay, like in what way?
That they're going to be asked fewer questions, but the questions aren't so much just follow along the page, but it's is this the form number in the corner? You know, that's not something our clients are accustomed to, verifying a form number. But then they're just asked, are questions 1 through 6 all answered no? Are questions 7 through 20? Correct, yes. And as long as they're answered no, no, and no, they're like, just a minute, and they run the check and come back and say, okay, put your agent on approved or preferred.
Wow.
Or if something is answered yes, which question is yes, and just going through that question. And then on the CFG, for their changes with the new e-app, I was very accustomed to, as soon as I submitted that application, I had an email saying your app is submitted, and sometimes very, very quickly I had an answer that your app is approved. And like I did one on the 8th that still, as of yesterday, hadn't even shown up in my pending business, and I've never seen an email on it yet. I've called them twice, and it was approved yesterday, but they said they're having a problem with their partner software kind of thing. So it's not all clicking automatically through their system like it was for us.
Yeah.
So it's just understanding anytime there's changes, there's some kinks to work out, and our job is just to be kind but persistent and make sure that nothing's getting lost in black holes or lost in space. So, you
absolutely. Hey, but
not getting mad at them that there's a problem, because they're making changes to improve it for us. So by no means get mad that there's problems.
Yeah, absolutely. You are right about that. All right, Karyn, thank you so much. One more thing. How far do you, like, where you run leads, what's the furthest place that you have committed to running appointments? Is it Eau Claire still? Like, how far are you willing to go out to run? You can
I go about 2 hours for my furthest. I'm very fortunate that, we live in a fairly large metro area with not that many agents. So the majority of what I run is pretty close to home, within probably hour and a half. But I still run some in Wisconsin
Okay.
and some into central Minnesota. So I go about 2 hours.
Okay. Cool.
So,
Yeah. Awesome. Thank
yep.
you.
All
Well,
right.
great job.
Thanks, Alex.
Karen rocked it. She is so full of wisdom, man. It's wisdom born of experience and learning everything that she's learned. And she runs that hotspot up there with Adam Johnson up in Minnesota. And as you heard, we need more agents up there. So she can help you with your agents. So if there's a place to go find agents, okay, in Minnesota,